Trump says he is sure the war in Ukraine will not start again after peace deal. He is also preparing for an operation in Mexico and has warned Iran several times. We'll talk about US policy and what Ukraine should expect with Andrij Dobriansky, Director of Communication and Media at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Mr. Dobriansky, thank you for joining us.
And thank you for inviting me on. Thank you again.
So Trump says Russia will not attack Ukraine again. Why does he think so?
President Trump, whether he thinks that or not, will continue talking. Many of the things that are coming out this week were of long discussions that President Trump invited on different journalists to speak with him for hours at a time. And many of these questions have been placed to him beforehand. He simply repeats what's in his head, saying that he can affect policy wherever it is in the world. It's not necessarily the policy of the United States going forward, but he feels empowered that he can say what he likes, including the fact that international law doesn't apply to anything the United States does. It's really what he believes, his own morality, are the limits of international law in his mind. Again, that's not what United States lawyers, the United States State Department, or United States National Security Council would say. But it is something that President Trump is saying without any political after effects. This will not affect him saying something about Russia, and then it might turn out something different down the line.
Russia is acting rather aggressively now. Today, Medvedev insulted Trump. How do you think? Why is Medvedev speaking instead of Putin?
I think the Russian media sphere needs some kind of voice out of Russia, given the fact that they are unable to do much in Ukraine other than kill civilians and threaten civilian lives by attacking energy infrastructure. What's happening on the global scale is they are losing their influence in South America with the change of regime in Venezuela. They are having their flagged Russian oil tankers being seized by American military personnel. This is the fifth tanker now, either by Venezuela or Russia, that has been seized, and there's now conversations that additional sanctions will be authorized to be put in place by the United States Congress later this month. Russia is being backed into a corner, and in order to counteract that, Russia needs some kind of disinformation out there. So it's not going to be Putin all the time in his speeches. Sometimes it falls onto Medvedev and other voices to make up statements so that it feeds into the Russian media landscape. However, in the end, Russia is still losing across the world.
So, as I understand, the main reason is that Putin is silent because he's afraid of Trump after the Venezuela operation.
Well, it's not necessarily that he's afraid, but Putin can't stay silent. Russia can't stay silent. The Russian media sphere will demand something to be said. And in this case, if Putin doesn't feel like doing it, he's a dictator. He'll just ask somebody else to do it.
What do you think about the Venezuela operation in common?
Well, we know that it's against international law because a country's sovereignty has been violated. This goes along with President Trump's idea that international law doesn't apply to him. Unfortunately, many of the treaties that define international law are international treaties that have been put into effect by the United States Senate. That means they have the full weight of American law. This intervention into Venezuela is being taken up this month by members of the Senate and members of Congress who have differences of opinion with the White House as to what is international law, and the fact that Congress did not authorize any of these kind of international operations. We know that there are further things that have been hinted at by President Trump, perhaps launching land attacks, aerial attacks against cartels in Mexico, possibly Colombia, Honduras. We know that there are other countries that President Trump is looking at possibly doing military interventions in, and this is why American leaders as well as international leaders are speaking up right now, not least of which Denmark, in terms of the rhetoric Trump is using about Greenland.
Mr. Dobriansky, it seems like you are in a good mood about what is happening around Russia.
It is definitely what we would have liked as advocates for Ukraine here in the United States to see more pressure put on Russia. We know that at the beginning of this administration, a year ago, the thoughts of what kind of support Ukraine would get was very much in the air. We're about a month away from the anniversary of that horrible meeting in the Oval Office between President Zelensky, the yelling by Vice President Vance against President Zelensky, as well as President Trump's behavior. And since that time, Ukraine has done an enormous job diplomatically, working throughout its government to finding ways of working with the Trump administration. And that includes the dramatic change of sending supplies to Ukraine via the Pearl system of European money being spent to make sure that weapons are still purchased from the United States. I believe that that system will still continue even after any kind of peace deal. And I believe that this is the basis of any kind of further security guarantee. If Trump can be convinced that these security guarantees and having American personnel on Ukrainian territory is something that could also be funded by either frozen Russian assets or reparations by Russia, or even by European countries and their budgets, this is something that will make it more palatable for Trump, as opposed to saying that he wants to pull away from Ukraine. So where we were last year to today, much different in a positive sense. And in a positive sense, I think we're only increasing the work together between the United States and Ukraine.
How do you see Russia's next step? Will the signs be broken, and what can we expect to hear?
I think the important thing for American experts to focus on is the fact that there are proclamations by people around this White House and in Congress that Russia has been driven out of South America, and then President Trump has taken over his dominance in that area. And that's simply not the case, because we have seen time after time, every time that Russia suffers a defeat, they will lay low, as they did when their tankers were taken. They did not engage with the superior military of the United States, but they still remain at hand. And this goes along with what Ukraine has been saying since the beginning of this war, not just in 2022, but also since 2014, that we will never have peace in Ukraine so long as that Russian state exists, which is why we need to keep working as activists around the world for the end of that Russian imperial sense. The way Russia is influencing not just its neighbors, but countries in South America, countries in the Middle East, until such time that the Russian Federation is broken apart and those independent nations are able to thrive, it will always remain a threat. And that's something that the United States needs to focus on, not think that just because they have one victory against Russia, that it is fully defeated.
It looks like Trump wants more power in the Western Hemisphere. How do you think? Is it true? And if it is, then why?
Well, President Trump has made this proclamation, as well as his administration, that the Western Hemisphere is ours. This, again, flies in the face of the UN Charter. Many countries would have a differing of opinion that we do not belong to you. This is not your hemisphere. This is our sovereign territory, where their sovereign territory exists. This is a problem for the world global order that was put into place after World War II. We have heard President Trump repeatedly state a fondness for the time prior to the international order post-World War II, a return to the 19th century when there were spheres of influence, like saying that the western half of the globe belongs to the United States. That's something that belonged to the age of empires that we have tried as an international community to get away from, to allow smaller states to have a bigger voice, to allow everybody to work on a level playing field, that they are equal nations, not better nations and lower nations. However, we are at a critical point here with the United States just this week removing itself from over 60 international agreements and international organizations. This is something that we are on an irreversible course. For over 60 years, we've had a demilitarized Europe. Not that they don't have militaries, but they have not been at the level that preceded World War II. and we need to make sure that we're aware of a militarized Europe means a more chance of internecine conflict. This is something that Europe does not want, and that means that further conflicts can break up around the world. That is the danger of having a world of empires. That is something that the international order sought to change, and unfortunately, we are backsliding into that 19th century.
The US is taking Russian Shadow Fleet tankers, and Russia only asks for its people back. How do you see? What does this mean? Why is the reaction so weak?
The reaction from Russia is weak because they cannot possibly defend these vessels. The whole point of the vessels was to test the international resolve. They knew that if the West wanted to interdict these vessels, they could. They just haven't been doing it for a long time. Now that the West is finally doing it, Russia will turn into a different way of attacking this. They may keep sending out vessels and just wait for the West to tire of claiming these vessels. We don't know what the next step is, but the important thing is to realize that Russia will not just lay down. Russia will think of new schemes of getting its oil out there, new schemes of trying to increase its fossil fuel industry, which we know has dramatically decreased, especially in the months of November and December 2025, a dramatic decrease in output given the Ukrainian attacks on oil refining and oil producing facilities in Russia. However, if they can't sell it to other countries, then they're really at a disadvantage.
Russia attacked Ukraine and used the Reshnik missile near the Polish border. Is this meant to scare someone, and who? Maybe it's for European countries. What is your opinion?
Well, I believe with certain other analysts that this is a sign of desperation. We all know the Oreshnik was designed to have some kind of nuclear capability. This is not what it's being used for. It's being used for its kinetic abilities. Russia does not have the same kind of bunker-busting technology that the United States has. So when it's trying to hit perhaps underground natural gas storage facilities in Western Ukraine, when it's trying to disrupt the land in Western Ukraine, it is attempting to use these very expensive hypersonics that they will never use with nuclear weapons because they're too scared to do that, obviously. But that they're trying to test the resolve of Eastern Europe. I think the more that Russia keeps attacking Western Ukraine, Eastern European countries like Moldova, Poland, the Baltics, even Finland will start organizing in some fashion to have a defense of the skies over Western Ukraine at the very least. I think if we do not get to a peace deal, that is the natural next step. That the West will seek to have a closing of the skies over Western Ukraine. However, we don't know exactly if that's something that Russia is actively working towards. So the more it fires against Western Ukraine, the more it's kind of asking for a response like closing of the sky so that it can get into a direct conflict with NATO. This is something that the United States has trying to prevent since 2014. It did not want NATO to go into direct war with Russia, which is why it was very weakly supporting Ukraine for a very long time. This might be a win-win for Russia if it keeps doing that. It keeps attacking Ukrainian civilians, trying to break the Ukrainian spirit, and also trying to get a response from the West. However, it may not like that response from the West, just like it may not like the tankers being seized as it was testing the West's resolve in that respect. So we will see what happens.
There was a meeting in Paris a few days ago about security guarantees for Ukraine. How do you think, what can Ukraine really expect according to the agreements?
I think before even anything is resolved with Russia, it's very likely that a security guarantee agreement will come into place between the West and the United States. I think the one thing we haven't been talking about enough is who's going to be paying for this. I don't believe that the United States will be paying for any kind of security agreement, just like the Pearl system that President Trump introduced in 2025 with NATO. President Trump wants to see foreign money be given to the United States, and once that payment is made, then some kind of security guarantee can happen. So just as he wants to prolong the system of Pearl purchasing for the defense of Ukraine, similarly, that could be put into place for defensive capabilities like foreign soldiers on the ground, not just American inspectors, making sure where the front line is, making sure there's no frontline interdictions, perhaps American soldiers around nuclear power plants and other facilities. But really, it's going to be a system that needs to be funded in some way. And that's the key point that is not being discussed publicly. I suspect that might be something that is being discussed privately that we still don't know of. But that will be the key issue. Who funds the ongoing defense of Ukraine going forward?
And there was an interesting detail. During these talks, a Russian official, Dmitriev, came to Paris. He made this quietly. And how do you think, what purpose could Dmitriev came to Paris? What he is really
I think it's obvious that he was there to try to meet with Witkoff and Kushner and follow up on the discussions that they've been having. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Russia has, unfortunately for Russia, not unfortunately for the world, but unfortunately for Russia, it doesn't seem like Russia has been involved too much in these conversations. Now, they have been successful with Putin's calls to President Trump about blocking the transfer of Tomahawks. They've been very successful into convincing President Trump, for instance, that Putin's residence was attacked, which finally President Trump acknowledged never happened. But it's these kind of interventions that we need to monitor to make sure when Russia puts out disinformation about Ukraine, Ukraine constantly has a method and a system of further talks happening with the United States so that it can clear the record and make sure that the United States knows exactly what's happening, not just listening to a person like Dmitriev or Putin, who clearly aren't there to tell the truth to the United States.
Dmitriev reportedly received peace ideas from the Kushner and from the Witkoff. Can Putin still delay things, or is this time run out?
I think Putin's strategy is to drag out the timeline. He doesn't want the United States to make a decision very quickly. He would rather have the ability to keep attacking Ukrainian civilians. He has clearly given up on the protection, not protection, he would never protect, but what he has done in central and western Ukraine is different than what he has been doing in the occupied territories. He's clearly interested now not in preserving any rail lines, not in preserving any physical infrastructure, but doing exactly what he did in eastern Ukraine, which is completely destroying infrastructure to the extent that several, over 12 population centers over 100,000 or more are completely wiped off the center of the earth now because of what he's done. And so similarly, Putin wants to play out more time so that he can level Zaporizhzhia, so that he can do what he's done to Dnipro, which is completely deprive that city of electricity, city of several 100,000, now freezing in the middle of winter. These are the kind of tactics that he wants to employ to break Ukraine's spirit, hoping that so long that he prolongs the conversations with the United States, he would have the time to do that and keep on going further in terms of bombing Ukraine.
Mr. Dobriansky, I very appreciate you for this conversation. I want to ask our viewers, please, if you like this video, press the button like under this video and leave a comment where you're watching us from. I'll remind you that my guest today was Andrij Dobriansky, Director of Communications and Media at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Thank you.